Hello, Kurt Jackson, retirement income strategist with KJ Financial in Liberty, Missouri, here with this week's installment of Your Money Matters. This installment is going to be about, we're going to start talking about the myths of money. We're going to focus on average returns and how the power of losses impact those. Throughout my years, I've done a ton of research, and I found that the things that traditionally we've been told through traditional retirement planning, traditional financial planning, is really, I don't know, I'm going to call them myths, but they're really lies. They're telling us things wrong. And throughout my research, I've uncovered these things, and it's been quite eye-opening. And we're going to start to share those types of things with you guys. So hopefully you can, if you're watching these, that maybe you can begin to better understand money. Today we're going to talk about average returns, and when we have an investment that we're looking at, what type of average returns am I looking at? So I'm going to ask you a question here. We've got three investments. We've got investment A that's going to earn an average return of 3% over the next 5 years. Investment B that would earn an average return of 5% over the next 5 years. An investment C that's going to earn an average return of 10% over the next 5 years. So, what are we told? We're going after the highest average return. So, if someone said, "Hey, you can earn 10% over the next 5 years versus 5 or 3," what are you going to choose? You're going to choose 10%, right? Right. Well, let's look at what the actual sequence of returns would be to see if that maybe changes your mind. In A, you're getting 3% every year, okay? Never higher, never lower. As you can see, the cumulative return is 15%. If we divide that by 5 years, our average return is 3%. B, you got a big year, 16%, then up 5, then big drop, down 37, but then you come back with a big 26% and then a 15% return. Well, the cumulative return of that is 25%. If we divide that by 5 years, that's a 5% average return. In C, we've got two huge loss years, down 50, but then we got three big up years, 50, 50, 50. Well, that's a cumulative return of 50% over that 5-year period. Divide by 5, it's 10% annual return, right? Let's look at what you actually earn, because isn't that what's most important? It's not your average return, but if I start with $100,000, what do I end up with after 5 years? And in an A, we're up 3% every year. So I went from 100,000 to 115,927. Nothing sexy, but I got a steady gain of 3% a year. B, if I go 16%, 5%, down 37, up 26, up 15, that's a 5% average return. But wait a minute, my actual balance went from 100 to 111, 188. That's less than the 3% return. What's going on there? What do you think C is going to do? Do you think it's going to be higher than A? It's got a 10% return. Do you think it's going to be higher than B? It's got a 5. They've only got a 5% annual return, or average return. Actually lost money. Those big losses. Remember I told you, first of all, we're talking about average returns, and we're also talking about power of losses. See, average return is a math term, okay? It's not a money term. So I refer to them as money math and math and money math. Now they say math never lies, but in this case, doesn't it? What are our actual returns? Since I'm at 3% every year, that was that's a no-brainer. Everybody could have figured that one out without a calculator, 3%. Well, B, my average return was 5%, but my actual return was 2.14. Okay, why? Because of that loss. Right? You have some higher gains, lower gains, but that big loss really brought it down. And then C, I'm at a negative 3.34%. Those two huge losses at 50%, killed us. It absolutely killed us. So even though we had a 10% average return, our actual return is negative 3.34. So what are we always taught to focus on? Average return. What does our broker, our retirement plan administrator, what does the media always talk about? Your average return. Your average return over time is going to be this. The market's always return this. Is that an average return or is that an actual return? They're average returns. They're not actual returns. Go ask your broker when they talk about investment. What kind of actual returns? When they say, are you going with it? Ask them if they're going with average return or actual return. They'll say average return. Do you know the difference between average return and actual return? I want to know my actual return. See if they even know. I'm wondering if they do. So here's where this happens, okay? We're talking about the power of losses as part of this. So if I lose 10%, I need 11 to get back to even. Question I'll ask people is, hey, if you lost 30% this year, what do you need to get back to even? And people will quickly go, oh, 30%. If you think about it, if I had $100,000 and I lost 30%, I lost 30,000. That's 70,000. That's what I'm working from. I'm not working from 100. So 30% of 70,000 is 21,000. That's only 91,000. So I'm not back to even. I need a 43% return. Now notice how this gets exponentially bigger. A 50% loss, I need a 100% return. Now look, from the peak of the market in October of 2007 to the floor of the market in March of 2009, we were down 59%, if I remember correctly, in the S&P 500. So it can happen. Look at 80 and 90. You need 400 and 900% to get back to even. Now, I'll talk about those briefly here. The reason I bring up those is I'm seeing more and more economists predict that when we have our next financial crisis, because, see, we didn't really solve anything in the last one. None of the problems that caused it were not solved. The government says they've solved them, but they haven't. They've actually exacerbated them, made them worse. So I'm seeing more and more economists saying that when we hit that next financial crisis, we may see an 80 to 90% drop in the market, which would be absolutely catastrophic to your portfolio if you don't have any protections in there to keep from losing that money. So that's what happens to the actual return, is when we lose, we have to have more to get back to even, and that's what it kills those average returns. Okay, let's look at a different scenario here. With the fact that people have lost so much money, we had the big crash or the big losses from 2000, 2002, then again from 2007 to 2009. People are starting to decide that, look, if I can find a way where I can protect from never losing my money, I'll give up something on the top end. I'll give up my high-end gains for that type of protection. Okay, so there's more and more people thinking along those lines. So in this scenario, in this hypothetical scenario, let's assume we have a 0% floor, but in order to get that 0% floor, we're gonna have to give up gains that are above 13.5. So anything above 13.5, I don't get any of that. I get 13.5. Anything below 13.5, between 13.5 and 0, I get all of that. If it's below, if we lost, we're at 0. 0 is our hero. Okay, so if I've got A that earns an average return of 3, B of 9.1, and C of 8.1, which one would you choose? Right? Kind of threw you a curveball before, so you might be hesitating, but you're still gravitating towards that B because it's got the highest average return, right? Well, what do you think? Let's see what happened. Actual return, okay? 3, 8.95, and 7.89. Which one would you choose now? If you've been listening, you know that's a no-brainer. I want the actual return of 8.95 because that's what I've actually earned. So let's take a look what those numbers look like. We didn't change anything. It's 3%. Even though you have a 13.5% ceiling and a 0% floor, you still get 3% because that's what you had. All right. The next one, if you'll see, we earned 13.5, then 5, then 0 in that instead of negative 37. Then we got 13.5. We got 13.5. So my cumulative return is 45.5 divided by 5. That's 9.1. Okay. I actually went from 100,000 to 153,524, much better than the 115,927 that we earned in A. And look at the difference between what the market would have done by you having all the potential for gains, but also have to suffer the losses. You had $111,188 versus 153,524. Which would you prefer? Now, the 8.95 is a little bit less than the 9.1 average return, the actual return is. That's because you didn't have a steady amount of gains. We had 13.5, 5, 0, 13.5, 13.5. So the actual returns is slightly lower, but you can tell that it's much closer than it was before. Remember, because we had a 5% return on it was our actual 2 point something. I can't remember. I apologize for that. So if we go to C, we've got 0, 0, 13.5, 13.5, 13.5. That's 40.5 divided by 5. That's an 8.1 average return versus 10. So it's less, but yet I have 100. I'm up because remember we're not losing. So those 50% down years didn't hurt us like it did if we had the money in the market in that scenario. And I understand that's an extreme scenario, but we want to put that in there just to show you the power of that. So instead of being down from 100,000 to 84,375, I'm actually up 146,214. Not as good as B, but a lot better than what we would have had if that had been the way the market went. So are you beginning to see where I'm coming from on this? So why people are saying, you know what, I'll take a 0% floor and a 13.5% cap if I'll give up those top end gains if I know the market's going to be flat, or when the market's down, I'm going to be flat. I'm not going to lose any money. More and more people are buying in it. Now, if you think the market's going to be up more than 13.5 every year and never go down, then this isn't the type of thing you want. But if you think that's what's going to happen, quite frankly, I think you're delusional. Okay. So let me ask you this. As you look at that, could this maybe be a better option than having money in a 401k or an IRA? Would you prefer to have that downside protection, give up some of those top end gains? Okay. More and more people are beginning to come to that reality, as I mentioned before. So something to think about. Now, unfortunately, if you have money, the money that's in your 401k, it would be difficult, depending on what your age is and the way your company is set up, to be able to try to move that money out into something like this. It would be difficult to do that. If you have an IRA, there are some strategies for that that could definitely be discussed. But really, all I wanted to show you here was just to ask about actual returns instead of average returns. If your financial pro doesn't understand the difference in that, is that someone that you really want to be having your money with? If they're focusing on average return, because I can shoot you a great average return, but it doesn't mean that's what I've earned. Look at number C, 10% average return, but I lost almost $16,000. That's not a good thing for you, I would think. I don't know. Maybe you like losing money. I doubt it. But all right. So that's what I wanted to kind of go over today. It's one of the myths of money. We're going to have more of these as we go forward. They won't necessarily be every week, but we'll have more as we go forward. If you have any questions, here's my contact information. Call me on my direct line, email me. I'd be happy to answer those things for you. We've got some different tools to kind of show you more specific to your situation, how it might look, how the difference. And there's a lot more to this, but like I said, we just kind of wanted to keep this somewhat short. So if you found what you saw today valuable, please share it with your friends, family, coworkers, anyone. Share the link. We put these out every Wednesday for the most part. There's been a couple times where I've missed because I was out of town or something along those lines. But I try to get them out every Wednesday, try to bring value to help you improve your situation with money. So this was one of our the myths of money, one of the installments for that, and we'll have more in the future. So if you have any suggestions on topics that you'd like to see, you can email those to me at kurt@kjfinancialonline.com. If you'd like to learn more about how we're different with our alternative strategies, go to maxmyretirementincome.com. It'd be great to have you there, and let us know if you do go there, give us some feedback on what you think about that. So thanks for tuning in. I hope to see you next week.